Hello and welcome to Autofocus. Today we've come into Jaipur to drive the new Tata Nexon. You might have seen some teaser images of this new Nexon, but this is it in the flesh. And if you did think that it's going to be only a minor model facelift, you would be in for a surprise. This is a fairly significant refresh for the Nexon, an SUV that is India's #1 selling SUV. It is an SUV that was originally launched in 2017 by Tata Motors, and it now gets a comprehensive upgrade both inside and outside. We're going to be driving this through the day today and giving you all the information about what you can expect in the new 2023 Tata Nexon. So the Tata Motors Nexon was one of the early adopters for the subcompact under 4 meter segment SUV, and that is enabled it to kind of also give customers what they've wanted. So Tata Motors of course says that they do want to keep abreast of the new trends, they do want to keep abreast of what the customer preferences are in this segment. So a lot of the changes have come in from customer feedback and expectations that Tata Motors has gleaned. There were some special editions like the Kaziranga edition that you might recall. Now all of that together did bring it up to this point where there is a sort of inflection in this segment, and Tata Motors says they want to offer customers a version of the Nexon that they would keep liking, and of course they want to be ahead of the competition. So that's what this new 2023 Nexon represents. Let's take a detailed look at all of its design and the cabin elements and how it performs on the road. So let's talk about the design of the new 2023 Tata Nexon and what's been changed in it. If you were to look at the front, of course, there is this entirely new front fascia. There's a new light signature that's come through. All of the light elements that you see are LEDs. And frankly, in terms of design overhaul, much of that design change is now focused on this front part of the Tata Nexon, which has been fairly completely overhauled from the point where the air pillar ends all the way to the front face. Now this bonnet slab here is completely new. It's a new form of clamshell, gets a nice strong center dome and raised on both sides, delivering fairly much strong SUV look. The front LED frame, this black frame with the DRLs has been completely changed, and of course it gets this new DRL signature, which also sort of doubles up as turn indicators with a progressive sort of variation. The front main headlamps, of course, LEDs, again projectors, and the fog lamps positioned right below. The entire front fender has been changed, and that Fox skid plate underneath delivers some more impact at the front. Now this grille here is also completely new. It is meant for breathing. Of course, what we have here is the turbo petrol DCT, which again is a completely new transmission, which we'll talk about. But this here is the DCA, as Tata Motors calls it, a dual clutch automatic transmission, and that does the breathing duty. You must remember, of course, that the Nexon also gets an electric variant, which is very soon going to be launched by Tata Motors sometime in the next week or so. We will be driving that too and giving you a first-hand impression. So Tata Motors' Chief Design Officer Martin Ullrich says that much of the attempt at the redesign of this new Tata Nexon has been focused on trying to clean up the design in terms of making it even more refined, in terms of making the shut lines tighter and some of the plastic panels more cleanly finished, and an integration of the lines in such a way that there is a lot of continuity. So in the front, for example, right at the base of the A-pillar, he says there's been a cleanup. So the panels, that the way they merge and some of the covering panels have been done very, very cleanly. And some of those elements that he spoke about are very evident when you look at the overall design and the stance of this new Nexon. Now from the side, if you look at the Nexon, those strong wheel arches built into the panels all of that continues. Much of that side design is pretty much identical to what the previous Nexon was. Of course, it does get a set of new 17-inch alloys with a special design, which also apparently helps in delivering a little more aero performance. The roofline is identical. The floating C-pillar impact, that is marginally being changed, and some of the lines, in the interest of continuity, have been sort of altered. But the big change, of course, is at the rear. As you can see, the continuous light bar, the LED bar that runs across from one tail lamp to another is the big addition. Is also something that enhances the visual width of the Nexon. It's something that again also integrates a lot of the design features across models in Tata's portfolio. You can see a little bit of the Harrier, you can see a little bit of the Safari, including the Altroz, a family lineage that you can identify, and of course it sits really well with this new Nexons. Now that is what you get with this LED light bar. It also gets a sort of welcome and goodbye signature when you lock the car and walk away. A rear fender, of course, again is also new, meant to mimic a little bit of the front's design impact. The tailgate overall and the rest of the rear continues to remain the same. The spoiler is also new, gives it a more complete look, also slightly larger than its footprint sort of impact, which is also helpful for this new Nexon. So we're in the cabin of the new 2023 Tata Nexon, and it is quite a departure from the previous Nexon. It's also quite a departure for a subcompact SUV, and it is, in my view, quite a bit of daring for them to have completely altered the way the entire dashboard looks. It's a huge jump off from where the Nexon was, the outgoing model, and a lot of the focus has been on digitizing the entire cabin and giving it a completely new fascia. The dashboard is all new. There are, of course, carryovers from the previous Nexon. So from that perspective, the IP is where a lot of the changes have been made. But if you really look at the cabin, the impact is huge in terms of the digitization that's happened, starting from this new steering wheel, which almost was a concept. It was in one of their concepts, and Tata Motors decided to literally productionize that concept variant of the steering wheel and give it this completely new fascia. So what you have here is a very digital looking center part of the steering wheel. The two-spoke steering wheel gets a lot of capacitive touch buttons, so a lot of the controls are now touch sensitive screens. You do get a few physical buttons, but most of the major menu options are all digitized. This screen looks like a digital screen, but it's actually a backlit black glass panel, but the impact is huge. This whole flat bottom steering wheel giving it that sporty, very aggressive, young profile. Stitched panels, Fox carbon fiber, center IP, all of the controls being completely new, and the entire center stack is now pretty much digitized. As you can see, the change in the cabin is very stark, very different from what the previous Nexon was. Of course, this entire digital panels that you see adorning the center stack, the floating infotainment system, and the digital instrument cluster, all of them coming together to give you that sort of modern futuristic feel. Now, some of the details that you must focus on and see includes this sort of thin bezel for the floating infotainment screen. This is a 17.8 centimeter infotainment screen that's been coordinated and customized with Harman. It has a music system then that sort of delivers a lot of impact from the fidelity viewpoint. The digital instrument screen is also a similarly sized 17.8 digital screen with a lot of options to change the display from in terms of its orientation, in terms of the menu screens it offers, and in terms of the color themes and stuff like that. Same is the case with this screen here, which has capacitive touch controls for boot release, for the 360-degree camera, for the climate control functions and all of that. This textured panels here and this center IP stitched panel, again giving it some premiumness. But the key impact and takeaway from this new Nexon is the fact that the finish quality is much better. The integration is much better, the panel gaps are tighter, and the overall impact is that this is now grown to be a more premium subcompact SUV, and that is a key takeaway that's going to be appreciated by customers. Lots of other features inside the cabin. Of course, voice activated features, there's Alexa integration, there's Apple Map. If you were to be connected using Apple CarPlay, you can have Apple Maps being displayed on the instrument cluster. You also have the option of using a mix of voice commands, and the IRA connected car features is the other addition, with a lot many more stuff that can be controlled remotely using your smartphone. And the bigger physical changes inside this new cabin, in addition to this theme that you're seeing, you are seeing this sort of purple theme that mirrors the paint job on the outside. For sure there might be takers for it, but it does look a little plasticky when you look at the color and its impact on the materials that have been used. That said, you do have the option of customizing it. There's going to be 4 basic trim variants that's going to be offered, with some additions where you get a plus pack or a sport pack. Cabin color theme can be changed, and some of the other features of course will vary depending on the trim variant that you choose. But what we are driving today of course is the Fearless, which is the top end Fearless Plus S variant, and this gets ventilated seats, perforated fake leather seats which have a dual color finish, and of course the seat ventilation, which during a hot summer day can be quite comforting to sit on. So the new 2023 Tata Nexon, what does it get in terms of powertrain and engine options? Let's take a look at that. The new Nexon does carry over the same 1.2 litre petrol turbocharged Revotron engine and the 1.5 litre turbocharged Revotorque diesel engine. These two engines have been carried forward in the same state of tune, but that doesn't mean there hasn't been any changes to the new Nexon. This is now BS6 and E20 compliant. Both the engines are also offered with the same 5-speed manual for the petrol and 6-speed AMT transmission, and for the diesel it gets the 6-speed manual and the 6-speed automated manual transmission. The petrol does get an additional new transmission in the form of the DCA, what Tata Motors calls terms for the dual clutch transmission. This is brand new gearbox for the same petrol engine. Revotron engine does deliver a peak power of about 120 PS and a peak torque of about 170 Newton meters, same as the previous state of tune in the outgoing Nexon. The diesel engine too delivers about 115 PS of peak power and 260 Newton meters of torque. This is the 1497 cc diesel engine. It is also turbocharged, it's really quick, and that differential in the torque becomes visible on the road when it does pick up speed really quick and can help you do really tight overtake maneuvers. Both the powertrain options are offered with 3 drive modes: Eco, City and Sport. The petrol DCA was the one that we drove through the morning today, and the dual clutch transmission does come through with its own character. My personal opinion while driving it through Jaipur's crowded city roads and on the highway was that it is tuned with an intent to deliver as much efficiency as possible. You do get the ability to choose gears using steering mounted paddles, and yet it does switch quickly to automated drive mode with a slight delay in throttle input. Other observation from the drive through the highway and mixed roads was that the dual clutch does tend to be a little sluggish, with a bit of a mismatch between throttle input and the acceleration levels. When you are at a higher gear and you deliver demand on the gearbox by flooring the throttle, there is a mild differential in the way it behaves. But once the RPM levels go past 2500 RPM and you are staying put in that rev band, you do get a more linear response from the gearbox. Automated manual transmission was not available for us to experience, but the diesel manual transmission was the other vehicle that I drove through the rest of the day in Jaipur, and I must say this certainly is very enjoyable manual gearbox, though I would have liked to have seen a slightly more clean shift. There were spots in the shift pattern where I did find it a little less quick in the way it shifts, but it still is very good manual transmission to work with. You can shift quick all the way up and down, and there is this ability to kind of preemptively move with the traffic situation on the road. So there doesn't seem to have been very much of a difference in the way the underpinnings have been tuned. The suspension setup seems to have been pretty much the same. The steering wheel itself has been changed, but the steering performance and the way it behaves and the amount of feedback that you get from the road also remains unchanged. As far as the suspension goes, the ride quality is quite much the same as the outgoing Nexon. It is still a fairly pliant setup with comfort bias. There is no overall feedback from the road on clean tarmac, though it does tend to crash through some really bad patches of road. That is when you do feel the slightly overemphasized comfort bias for the suspension. Otherwise, it does ride clean. There is mild body roll, but nothing too much to complain about. Overall, there should be a good ride that can be expected from the new Nexon for most owners in this segment. So we've been driving the new Tata Nexon through the day today in Jaipur, and we started out with the turbocharged petrol engine and the dual clutch transmission combination. And what we have here later in the day is the diesel with the manual transmission. Now the 1.5 liter diesel Revotorque engine is quite fun to drive on our roads. It is the kind of right sort of power and torque that's being delivered, and so it's pretty quick and nimble on most conditions. A wrap up that I can give you, there's a lot of those design features that I told you in the front which definitely catch your eye and is quite distinctive, makes it very special to look at even during the night and also during the day, with these new very funky body colors that have now arrived with special colorways both for the petrol and for the diesel. The rear also looks very distinctive with its LED light band and connected tail lamps. Now that is a good sort of stance for the Nexon and is a very good facelift. You must remember that the Nexon is currently being used as an adapted platform for its EV version. It's not a platform that is going to survive once Tata Motors sort of transitions into the EV segment completely, or has a mix of both ICE and EV. Now given that this is a platform that's not changed, so it's not really like a generation 2 vehicle, though from the point in time when it was a concept, it's almost a decade now since it was conceived. But the Nexon, this is more than just a facelift, it's definitely more than skin deep, and particularly in the cabin it feels so much more special sitting inside. That sense of minimalism, that sense of design focus, that sense of attention to detail, right from the way that the aircon vents behave, right from the way that there is that mild resistance when you attempt to move the aircon vent fins. All of that feels very good. Fit and finish again in the cabin is so much better than the outgoing Nexon. So the cabin does feel very special to sit inside. It also gets stuff like ventilated seats now and a lot more kit inside the cabin that you can choose from. Tata Motors has decided now to do away with its variant nomenclature that it had before, and now this is going to be called a new Nexon with the option of choosing from 4 different personas and each with its own sort of kit of features. So you do have the option of choosing from 4 different personas for the new Nexon, which is pretty much like a variant strategy, but then it's highly customizable is what Tata Motors tells me. Now these 4 personas are called Smart, Pure, Creative and Fearless. Now each of them has their own sort of variation in the trim elements that you would get, with some of the trim elements being available only in the Creative and the Fearless personas. Now you do also have the option of choosing a dual shade or a solid sort of shade. This is another new color and I'm really liking it. It has a certain sort of presence under the sun, and it also gives it a very, very striking profile. The good thing about these new colors, of course, is the way they sit comfortably on the new Nexon, and that then is your trim strategy. I'm guessing that you should expect prices to be in the range of about 9 lakhs to about 15 lakhs. A lot of new kit that also get enhancements in the new Nexon, the 20 new IRA connected car features, and some of the comfort features inside the cabin, and the whole digitization strategy really make it stand out when you sit behind the wheel. That then is the new Nexon. Try and check it out at your nearest dealership and give us your comments.